There's a psychology behind why some people get consistently disrespected while others command natural reverence, and it has nothing to do with luck, circumstances, or other people's character. Using Carl Jung's depth psychology, we're about to reveal exactly why disrespect happens and the precise internal shifts that stop it permanently. You've experienced this, being interrupted mid-sentence as if your words carry no weight, having your time treated as worthless while others' schedules are sacred, watching people light up for certain individuals while barely acknowledging your presence, the friend who appears only during crises, the colleague who dismisses every contribution, the partner who treats your devotion as an endless resource. What if this pattern isn't random? What if there's an invisible psychological mechanism broadcasting signals that determine whether others approach with respect or contempt? Carl Jung discovered that external treatment functions as an unforgiving mirror of internal psychological states. The disrespect you receive rarely reflects others' moral character. It serves as precise feedback about unconscious self-positioning, buried beliefs about personal worth, and hidden contracts made with submission throughout your lifetime. This phenomenon transcends simple social dynamics or interpersonal skills. It reveals something far more profound about the invisible architecture of human psychology, how the unconscious mind broadcasts signals that determine whether others approach with reverence or contempt, care or carelessness. Carl Jung understood that external reality functions as an unforgiving mirror of internal psychological states. The treatment one receives from the world rarely reflects random circumstance or the moral character of others. Instead, it serves as precise feedback about unconscious self-positioning, buried beliefs about personal worth, and the hidden contracts made with submission throughout a lifetime. What we're about to explore ventures into the shadowed territory of self-respect psychology, investigating why some souls attract reverence while others magnetize exploitation, why certain individuals inspire consideration while others invite dismissal. This investigation will disturb comfortable assumptions about victimhood and responsibility, revealing the uncomfortable truth that respect begins as an internal revolution before manifesting as external recognition. The journey ahead demands unflinching honesty about the unconscious ways dignity gets surrendered, boundaries dissolve, and authentic power becomes traded for the illusion of acceptance. Jung recognized that the psyche projects its internal landscape onto external reality with mathematical precision. The individual who unconsciously sees themselves as lesser will inevitably encounter treatment that reflects this hidden self-assessment. This occurs through the subtle ways buried beliefs shape behavior, the apologetic tone before every request, the nervous laughter when opinions are dismissed, the body language that unconsciously shrinks to occupy minimal space. These signals operate below conscious awareness, yet they register immediately in others' minds. Consider how you behave when someone interrupts you mid-sentence. Do you stop talking and retreat? Or do you finish your thought? That split-second choice communicates volumes about how you expect to be treated. This dynamic creates what depth psychology terms hidden agreements, a process whereby individuals unconsciously recreate familiar patterns of treatment that confirm their deepest beliefs about themselves. The person who learned in childhood that love required self-sacrifice will unconsciously seek relationships that demand exactly this currency. This pattern persists because it serves a hidden function, maintaining psychological consistency. The unconscious mind prioritizes familiar suffering over unfamiliar joy, known patterns over unknown possibilities. Even when these patterns cause pain, they provide the comfort of predictability and the illusion of control. Jung emphasized that this hidden self-perception operates through what he called shadow projection, the tendency to disown personal power while seeking in others what has been abandoned within. The individual who surrenders their authority constantly seeks validation from external sources, creating relationships based on psychological dependency rather than mutual respect. Breaking this pattern requires recognizing that external treatment serves as information about internal positioning rather than evidence of others' character defects or personal inadequacy. The human psyche constructs elaborate systems for navigating social reality, chief among them what Jung termed the persona, the carefully crafted mask designed to secure acceptance and avoid rejection. When this social adaptation becomes mistaken for authentic identity, it creates what we might call approval dependency, a psychological state that transforms self-esteem into a commodity controlled by others' opinions. This dependency manifests through specific patterns that inadvertently communicate availability for exploitation. Think about the last time you said yes while your entire body screamed no, or when you apologized for having a need. These moments reveal how the approval-dependent person lives in constant performance mode, monitoring external reactions to determine their worth. The individual trapped in this pattern carries unconscious programming that equated love with utility, acceptance with self-denial. They learned that being good meant silencing personal needs, carrying this script into adult relationships where they unconsciously seek confirmation of this familiar dynamic. Yet here lies the cruel paradox. The more someone sacrifices authenticity to gain acceptance, the less genuine respect they receive. Others may exploit their generosity or express superficial gratitude, but rarely offer the deep regard reserved for those who honor their own boundaries. Your willingness to betray yourself doesn't inspire admiration, it invites contempt. Beneath the surface of excessive accommodation lies a psychological territory that most individuals refuse to explore, the shadow aspects of their personality that have been repressed, denied, or condemned as unacceptable. Jung recognized that these disowned qualities continue to influence behavior from the unconscious, often in ways that perpetuate the very patterns they were meant to prevent. The individual who consistently accepts poor treatment typically carries a shadow filled with unexpressed anger, healthy aggression, and natural assertiveness. These qualities, condemned as selfish or mean during childhood development, get buried in the unconscious, while their absence creates a vacuum that invites exploitation. This repression occurs through early psychological conditioning that confuses healthy self-protection with cruelty, appropriate boundaries with selfishness, authentic assertion with aggression. The child learns to survive by suppressing their natural protective instincts, developing instead an accommodating persona that prioritizes others' comfort over personal well-being. Yet the shadow does not disappear through repression. It merely operates from darkness, influencing behavior in subtle but powerful ways. The unexpressed anger transforms into passive-aggressive resentment. The buried assertiveness becomes chronic anxiety about conflict. The repressed protective instincts manifest as attraction to relationships that require endless self-sacrifice. This creates what Jung called shadow contamination, a process whereby disowned psychological material unconsciously shapes behavior in destructive patterns. The individual believes they are being kind and accommodating while unconsciously seeking situations that justify their buried resentment. They imagine themselves as spiritually evolved while actually remaining trapped in childhood survival patterns. Integration of the shadow requires confronting these repressed aspects with curiosity rather than judgment. The individual must reclaim their capacity for healthy anger, appropriate assertiveness, and protective boundaries, not to become cruel or selfish, but to become whole. Only through embracing the full spectrum of their psychological nature can they escape the prison of unconscious submission. Boundaries represent the psychological foundation upon which all healthy human interaction rests, the invisible architecture that defines where one person ends and another begins. Jung understood that boundaries emerge from clear self-knowledge and personal worth, not as techniques to be learned, but as natural expressions of authentic identity. Picture this scenario. A friend consistently calls during your designated work time, interrupting your focus with their latest drama. The boundary-confused person thinks, "They must really need me. It would be selfish to ignore them." The self-respecting person thinks, "My time matters. I'll call them back when it works for me." The individual who struggles with boundaries typically carries beliefs that equate self-protection with selfishness, personal needs with greed. These beliefs create internal conflict whenever situations require clear limits, manifesting as anxiety when contemplating saying no, guilt after establishing boundaries, and fear that limitation setting will result in abandonment. Healthy boundaries operate through what we might call aligned authenticity, a state where internal values match external expression. The individual knows their limits not as arbitrary rules, but as natural expressions of their essential nature. They communicate these limits without apology or lengthy explanation because they recognize boundaries as information, not requests for permission. This clarity creates what Jung called psychological sovereignty, the capacity to remain centered in one's own truth, regardless of external pressure or manipulation. The sovereign individual does not require others' permission to honor their boundaries, nor do they seek validation for their limits. They understand that boundaries serve both parties in any relationship by creating clear parameters for healthy interaction. The process of establishing healthy boundaries often involves what Jung termed conscious suffering, the willingness to experience temporary discomfort rather than betraying one's authentic needs. This might mean accepting others' disappointment when declining requests, tolerating criticism when refusing to accommodate unreasonable demands, or facing the possibility of relationship loss when asserting non-negotiable limits. Yet this conscious suffering serves a transformative function. It demonstrates to both conscious and unconscious levels of the psyche that self-respect takes priority over external approval. Each time someone honors their boundaries, despite pressure to compromise, they strengthen their internal sense of worth and communicate to others that they expect respectful treatment. The transformation from unconscious submission to conscious self-respect requires practical application of psychological insights in daily life. This change occurs through specific practices that gradually reshape both internal identity and external relationships. When was the last time you apologized for having a need, said yes while screaming no inside? These moments reveal where self-respect gets traded for temporary approval. The first practice involves developing awareness of internal signals that indicate boundary violations. Learn to recognize the physical tension, resentment, or anxiety that arises when situations demand authentic response rather than automatic accommodation. That knot in your stomach when someone makes an unreasonable request, that's valuable information, not something to ignore. The second practice involves choosing conscious response over unconscious reaction. When faced with disrespectful treatment, take time to center yourself before responding. Ask, if I truly respected myself, how would I handle this? Then trust that answer, even if it disappoints others. The third practice involves conscious curation of your social environment. Notice which relationships consistently demand self-betrayal and which ones appreciate your authenticity. Gradually distance from exploitation while cultivating connections with those who honor genuine expression. Here's what this looks like practically. Stop explaining yourself when you say no. I can't do that is a complete sentence. Start prioritizing yourself in your own schedule. Block time for what nourishes you, not as luxury, but as necessity. Replace reactivity with pause when someone disrespects you, then communicate clearly. That doesn't work for me. Your boundaries aren't walls, they're invitations to treat you well. True respect emerges not through external strategies or behavioral modifications, but through an internal revolution that transforms the fundamental relationship one maintains with themselves. This revolution begins with the recognition that self-respect cannot be earned through perfect performance, but only through the courage to honor one's authentic nature, regardless of consequences. The process typically begins with what Jung called the death of the false self, a profound disillusionment with the persona-driven life that prioritizes others' approval over personal integrity. This death often feels catastrophic because it requires releasing the illusion of control that comes from believing respect can be earned through sacrifice and accommodation. Yet this dissolution creates space for something more authentic to emerge. What depth psychology terms essential identity, the core self that exists independent of others' opinions, expectations, or validation. This identity recognizes its inherent worth not as something to be proven, but as a fundamental fact of existence. The internal revolution involves developing what Jung called self-containment, the capacity to find fulfillment, meaning, and validation through internal sources rather than external approval. This does not mean becoming isolated or self-absorbed, but rather approaching relationships from a place of wholeness rather than need. This transformation manifests through subtle but profound changes in presence and energy. The self-respecting individual occupies space differently, speaks with greater authority, and maintains composure in the face of others' attempts at manipulation or boundary testing. These changes occur naturally as internal shifts in self-perception rather than through forced behavioral modifications. The revolution also involves what Jung termed shadow integration, reclaiming the disowned aspects of personality that contain essential power and protective capacity. This includes embracing healthy anger as information about boundary violations, assertiveness as a tool for authentic communication, and selective availability as a form of self-care rather than selfishness. As this internal revolution progresses, external relationships begin to shift in response to the changed energy and presence. Some relationships deepen as they adjust to new parameters of mutual respect. Others fade away as they prove incompatible with authentic interaction. New relationships emerge that reflect the highest standard of treatment now expected and maintained. The individual discovers that respect was never something to be earned through perfect behavior, but something to be claimed through authentic presence. This claiming requires no external validation because it emerges from a deep knowing of personal worth that exists independent of others' recognition or approval. The ultimate expression of psychological maturity involves what Jung termed self-possession, the capacity to remain centered in one's own truth, regardless of external circumstances or pressures. This sovereignty represents freedom from the unconscious need for others' approval, while maintaining the ability to form genuine connections based on mutual respect rather than dependency. Self-possession manifests through specific psychological qualities that naturally command respect from others. The individual no longer seeks validation for their choices, explanations for their boundaries, or permission for their authentic expression. They understand that their worth exists independent of others' recognition and that relationships serve to enhance rather than complete their existence. This sovereignty creates what depth psychology calls attractive autonomy, a quality that draws others who are capable of genuine relationship while repelling those who seek exploitation or control. The self-possessed individual becomes naturally selective in their associations, not through judgment or superiority, but through alignment with their authentic values and standards. The transformation also involves what Jung called comfortable solitude, the ability to enjoy one's own company without the anxiety or emptiness that drives many toward unsatisfying relationships. This comfort with solitude paradoxically enhances the quality of all relationships by eliminating the desperation that makes poor treatment acceptable. Self-possession does not mean becoming cold, distant, or indifferent to others' needs. Rather, it involves approaching relationships from a place of choice rather than compulsion, generosity rather than obligation, and authentic care rather than guilty accommodation. The self-possessed individual can offer genuine support because they maintain clear awareness of their capacity and limitations. This sovereignty naturally evolves into what Jung termed conscious leadership, the ability to inspire others through authentic example rather than demanding respect through position or manipulation. The self-possessed individual becomes a model for healthy self-relationship, unconsciously giving others permission to honor their own boundaries and authentic needs. The journey from unconscious submission to conscious self-respect ultimately reveals itself as a choice between seeking respect through perfect performance or claiming dignity through authentic presence. This choice cannot be made gradually. The psychological patterns that maintain submission resist incremental change. The transformation requires what Jung called a complete reversal, a fundamental shift from external validation to internal authority. Right now, notice one moment where you automatically shrink, apologize, or accommodate against your better judgment. In that moment, choose differently, not for them, but for you. Stand in your worth instead of performing it. The individual who chooses self-respect faces potential rejection alongside the liberation of authentic living. They must relinquish the familiar comfort of being needed in favor of the uncertainty of being genuinely valued. This choice becomes available only when the cost of self-betrayal finally exceeds the fear of others' disapproval. The transformation offers no guarantee of universal acceptance. It promises only the possibility of genuine connection, relationships based on mutual recognition rather than exploitation, authentic care rather than obligatory service. Those who undertake this journey discover that respect was never something to be earned through sacrifice, but something to be claimed through presence. You don't command respect by performing worthiness. You claim it by embodying it. The external world shifts in response to this internal revolution through the precise laws of psychological cause and effect. When someone truly respects themselves, others unconsciously adjust their behavior accordingly, recognizing and responding to the energy of genuine self-worth. The choice awaits in each moment that demands authentic response rather than automatic accommodation. The respect you've been seeking from others has been waiting within all along, requiring only the revolutionary act of recognition and the daily practice of honor.